All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are joining us from. Hello and welcome to Fanshawe College's virtual open house. My name is Priyank Mistry and I work in International Center of Fanshawe College, and I will be your host for today's session. But before we begin, I would just like to mention a few housekeeping items for the day. Give me 1 second. All right, so all the participants' webcams and mics are turned off for this session, but that does not mean that you cannot engage with us. If you have any questions throughout this session about the program, please submit them in the question features. And to open the question feature, just click on the question mark that you might be seeing on the right side of your screen if you are joining us from your laptop or computer. Following the session, we will have a Q&A from the questions submitted, and we will try our best to answer and go through each questions that are submitted in the tab. If you have any further questions, even after the session, we do recommend you to get in touch with us at international@fanshawe.ca. And one last thing I would like to mention is if you have multiple programs open on your screen, it may compromise your webinar experience. So I would advise and take a moment to close any open programs that you may have before we begin today's session. All right, so let's get started. Now I would like to introduce our panelists for today's session, Robert and Sarah, who will be speaking about Social Service Worker Program at Fanshawe College. Welcome, Robert and Sarah. We do have a couple of interview questions ready for you today to start off this session. So let's just jump right into it. The very first question I have here is, what will I learn in the Social Service Worker Program at Fanshawe College?
Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Actually, the Social Service Worker Program has two programs, and so I'm just going to highlight them so students have awareness about what might be their best fit for them. So we have what we identify as the regular program. It is a 2-year program, and it is basically 4 semesters long. A student would start in the fall time, and then they would complete the program in 2 years in April. And in that program, as again, it'd be 4 levels. So the student would come in the fall, and then they would have the winter semester, and they'd take the summer off, and then they would come back in the fall again, and then they would complete the program in the winter time. So that program is open to anybody who's interested in a social service worker program, who has a high school diploma or any other kind of post-educational institution diploma or degree. The other program that we have is a Social Service Worker Fast Track program. The Fast Track program is a niche program, which means it's specifically identified for people who have a background in psychology or sociology. So that's the target for that program. That program is a 10-month program, but once again, the only way to get into that program is if an individual has a background in one of those social sciences, typically sociology or psychology. So what will students...
Sorry. Yep, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, no worries. And so what students will learn in that program, they are both very similar in what they will learn. The difference between them is because the students entering the fast track program already have post-secondary education background, they will be exempt from a few courses, but they will also take almost the same amount of courses or as many courses in a shorter period of time. So it is very fast. So the name fast track is actually quite appropriate for that name. So some of the information or some of the topics that students will learn about will include psychology, sociology courses. Those are in the regular program. They are not in the fast track program because of the background that the students would already have. So some of the other courses that the students would be taking are counseling courses. These are offered in every single one of our semesters. We will offer a group development course, and that is in both of the programs. The group development course is a process course, so you'll actually be working through activities and group assignments, and that is how it works. So you'll have an ability to understand how a true group process works and how you can work through some of those difficulties. As you realize, when you're in the human service field, you'll be working in lots of group dynamics. Other courses include things like research, and working in community development, working with families and assessments, and other things that include mental health. So that's a general overview of what you'll learn in our program.
Perfect, that does answer a lot of questions. Another question I have is, what is the course load look like?
So as again, there are two programs. So within the Fast Track program, the Fast Track program is very busy. You'd be taking about 8 classes a semester. So you're looking at about 24 hours of classes. So that's in class. Our program is set up again that you are looking at basically having that many hours in homework. So a fast track program, you're looking at about 40 something hours worth of work. So we identify that pretty much as a full-time job. So the course load is very heavy. In the regular program, it's a little less busy because you don't have as many courses because it's spread out over 2-year functions. So what we're looking at is basically about having 6 to 7 classes a semester. So you're looking at about a 35 to 40 hour work week. Is he frozen again?
I think a little bit of technical difficulties. Maybe I'll just jump in and share a little bit about placement. So in addition to the academic course load that Robert just described, for the people in the regular program in the second year of the program, in addition to balancing those academics, you're also going to be in placement, and placement occurs for 20 hours per week. So that's typically when you're matched with an organization in our community, and then you apply your knowledge and skills through the work that that organization does with appropriate supervision. In the fast track program, same idea. The first semester, though, from September to December is when you are actually in academics only. And then from January until the end of your program in June, that's when you're participating in the placement process. So for the winter term, it's about 18 hours per week, same idea. As the regular program, you're matched with an organization, etc. And then you do what's called a block placement in May and June, where you're out full time with the organization. So you get a lot of really great experience. We, want to teach you the skills, and then part of, the college program is also to have you applying the skills in the field. So then that way you're really job ready upon graduation. And so we feel that how we've coupled the academics with the like case presentation style, the group work, in community work, etc. And then of course the placements, that all will really have you set up well for the field.
Awesome. That's a great answer for both of you. Again, everybody who have just joined us, I would like to mention that right now what we are doing is we are going through some question and answer about this particular program that we have prepared for an interview. And right after that, we will be moving forward to a live Q&A. So if you do have any questions about this program, please don't hesitate to ask them in the question tab of the webinar. So moving on to the next question, can I work another job while I am taking this program?
So within the fast track program, it is very difficult to work a lot of hours. We have had students, and again, one of the biggest things is we talk about time management skills. And so if you have strong organization skills, it is possible to work on a part-time basis, but you're looking at probably no more than 20 hours a week. Within the regular program, once again, if you have good organizational skills, you could probably work about up to 25 hours when you're managing. So that's typically what the feedback from previous students tell us about how much they can actually work. But once again, it is based on significant and appropriate time management skills.
Perfect, that's a great answer. Moving on to the next question, what does placement look like for this particular program?
So I had a chance to answer that already, but okay. I think maybe there was a little bit of a blip. Do you think that everybody heard?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there might have been a little bit of blip from my side. If you want to repeat just a little bit of it, I guess.
Sure. So the placement process again in the 2-year program happens in the second year of your program, where you're balancing academics and placement for the entire second year of the program. And then in the fast track stream, the first semester of your program from September to December is academics only. And then from January to April, you're balancing academics and placement. And then in May and June, it's a block placement where you're just out on placement with the same organization you've been matched with in January to April. So that's one thing I didn't mention before, is we always match with one organization. Our philosophy or our pedagogy is that we want students to have a long-term placement where they're able to develop not only those initial skills, but also deepen those skills. So then that way they're effectively a frontline worker at that organization by the time they're ready to graduate. So then that way they have the time to develop the relationships with community partners, community citizens, clients, service providers, etc. As opposed to just kind of jumping in and out of short-term placements where maybe they don't get the depth of knowledge or ability to apply their skills.
That's great. That's great.
I
Moving on
think
to the
actually,
next question. Yes, sorry.
if you don't
Yes,
mind, I think
please
the
go
other
ahead.
piece that goes with it that Sarah spoke about is that the other advantage to that kind of placement model is that once a student has been in an agency for that long of a period, they are well known within the organization. So when students do well on placement, they're actually one of the first people that they look at as a candidate to hire. So it's actually very helpful for our students in that aspect. As a college, we have a very good, Fanshawe itself has a great reputation and has the ability to help students get a job quickly after graduation. Within our program itself, we're actually above the provincial average. And so typically we're looking at about 85% of our students get a job within the first 6 months. And a significant portion of those people get a job either with that agency or within the field or the area in which they just had a significant placement.
That is correct. That's a great point that we definitely have, Robert. Thanks for adding that. Moving on to the next question. Can you shed some light on what are some of the assignments that students would take participation in when they are doing this program?
That's a great question. And so, as we mentioned, there are a lot of different courses, and because we're college, we're very application based. So you will find some courses that might look a little more what we would call traditionally university style, where there will be a few tests and a paper or some assignments or in class of those kinds of things, but primarily we focus on application. So to make application, we have our students do lots of different kind of learning activities. So the learning activities happen within the classroom. So we call these in-class activities, and then we have other ones where they actually engage within the community. So we have what we call community mapping. So within the social service field or the social work field, there's actually two different streams. The streams are individuals, families, and groups, which are counseling styles that people talk about. And then there's community development, where you actually engage a larger community and try to help them empower themselves to help address some of the issues or concerns that they have. So in those kinds of things, we have a community mapping, and that kind of helps overlap with our community development project. And these community development projects that we have, the students will actually go out and they're required to be out in the field with a community for an entire academic year. And they help to, they engage the community, so they have to learn and develop resources, learn and develop relationships with the citizens, and to find out what their strengths are, the citizens' strengths, and find ways to help to empower them. So that's one of the examples. We have other examples, including family assessments, where we will have paid actors come in and act as a family, and you as the student will actually do the assessment on these individuals, and you have an entire family plan that takes the entire semester to create. Our basic counseling classes, we hire, again, paid actors, and they will come in and they will act as a client, and you act as the professional counselor, and you will then do a process recording related to those things. So we find many different ways in which we can help the student actually experience as close as we can to having them out in the community, and give them a real authentic experience, in addition to, as what Sarah also mentioned, about the placement.
Mm-hmm.
That is great. That is great to have a practical exposure like that as a student while doing the program. I cannot imagine better ways to understand the whole mentality of social service workers aspect of it. So that is great. I do have one last questions for our interview, which is, what are some key characteristics that students should have when entering this program?
I can start us off, Robert.
Thanks.
Robert already mentioned time management skills and organizational skills, I think, are really key assets for somebody coming into this program. Willingness to learn, inability to accept feedback, because in carpentry, for example, your hammer is your tool, your screwdriver is your tool. In social service work, you are your tool. And when you work with other people, part of what makes somebody good at that is being able to accept feedback and adjust and make and be flexible and adaptable when they need to be, and adjust their approach. So we give a lot of feedback in our program, and it's all meant to be supportive and helpful so that somebody can be successful in this field. But I think being open to receiving that feedback and being willing to be flexible, adaptable, and learn and grow is really key. And then I would say, just to kind of jump off of what Robert was saying before, when you start this program, that's really the beginning of your career. So a level of professionalism. We do recognize that professionalism is a skill and something that people will learn and grow throughout the 2 years or so with us. But I do think that recognizing that your career starts the day you start at Fanshawe with this program is important. So then that way you can really start to fine tune your professionalism skills and prepare yourself for the field. Do you want to add anything, Robert?
I think you did a wonderful job. Thanks. I think the other pieces that I might add would also include that kind of branch off. What Sarah talked about is the ability to give and receive feedback. And so it's about how we communicate and our ability to be self-aware. So everybody has blind spots. Everyone has areas in which they need to work on. And as Sarah talked about using a tool, I'm going to use the analogy of the carpentry tool. So sometimes a one-size hammer does not fit all. So when you're working with people, you have to use sometimes a different hammer to hit a nail in carpentry, and sometimes you have to be able to adjust your strategies and your ideas when you're working with a client to assist them where they're at. And so to be able to see what you're doing as using yourself as a tool and how you actually might be working against the client as opposed to with the client. And so that's what we talk about with self-awareness. And in that self-awareness, again, would come the other piece about the feedback and how we can change and adapt to those things. The other thing is initiative and motivation are really huge pieces. Because when you go out into the community and do those kind of things, there are lots of times in which the student is by themselves. And so they need to be able to take the initiative to engage the community in the appropriate ways. And so sometimes that can be really difficult for people. The other piece in part, when we talk about the motivation is a huge piece. You're going to have a lot of different work that goes on. So however you find ways to motivate yourself to be able to get the work done and to find out the assignments and activities and ask those questions is always a huge element to student success.
Perfect. Those are really great answers. I think I have reached at the end of all the interview questions. Is there anything else that Robert or Sarah you would want to add or share about this program before we move on to the live Q&A section of our session?
I think we should see what folks are looking to know.
Okay. Perfect. So once again, thank you very much for providing such an insightful information about the program. Now we are going to move on to the live Q&A. So once again, everyone who has just joined us or still hesitating to ask the question, you should not. Please go ahead and ask any questions that they may come for social service worker programs in the question tab. So we have a number of questions in the queue already. I'm going to start with the first one here. I have a degree in sociology, but I registered for the normal program for the winter intake. Is it possible to waive some of the courses?
So that's a great question. And the answer is, to be very honest, it comes down to a thing that we usually say, it depends. So if you have a degree in sociology, as long as the experiences or the workload that you've had credits meet equivalency to our courses, they have to be at least 80% the same. So there may be some courses, if you have a sociology background, we do have an introduction to sociology course, and I'm sure with a sociology degree, you'd be able to obtain that credit, but I don't know the other courses that you've taken. So basically what would happen is you would need to submit your course information sheets, and they need to be detailed so I can identify what you've learned in that. So the course learning outcomes along with the assignments and the activities, the textbooks and those kinds of things. And so I can map it across to some of the other courses.
Perfect. I think that does answer the question. Moving on to the next one. What are the kind of jobs our graduates get after completing this program?
I can start off with that. So we are a generalist program, so we work from people across the lifespan. And so it really depends because there's lots of ways to in a way specialize after you've exited the program. So you could work at, like, I don't know, what a center called Child Reach, for example, where you're working with young children and families. You could work through restorative justice, working with people who've come in conflict with the law, whether that's youth or adults, through something like a St. Leonard's. You can work outreach through a variety of different community organizations. You could work in long-term care or retirement care. You could work at community centers, family centers, schools. There's really, in my opinion, kind of no end to where you can apply these skills. It just is a matter of where you have an interest in working with a particular population, and then continuing your training after the program in professional development, because that's what we all have to do, and then kind of growing your skills and interests in whatever population you find is a passion for, I suppose.
Sure. That's a great answer. I have two more questions actually. The first one is, what is the job market for the social service worker program or related jobs within or around the London area itself? So if somebody, say, wants to do the program and after graduating wants to stay in London city itself, are there any possible opportunities, or what are the kind of job posting they can get after finishing it?
So as Robert had previously mentioned, a lot of times students who complete our program because they've been with an organization for usually about 8 months, a lot of times those students are offered, part-time or contract positions to start, and that's within the London area because that's where we match our students for placement. And then that can turn into a longer-term job, or sometimes if that specific organization isn't able to offer a position, often a sister organization or somewhere else in the community working with a similar population might have job postings, and then students can apply and or at that point graduates can apply and gain employment. So I think Robert said it's about an 85% employment rate upon graduation within the first 6 months. And I would say when we poll the audience or our graduates, oftentimes they're saying that they have gotten jobs within the area in which they had done their placement, and if they didn't, it was often because they chose to move back home or something like that. So I would say at this time, the job market is pretty robust for students looking to gain employment upon graduation.
That is a great answer. I have one last question, which is how marketable this certificate is, not just in Ontario, but all over Canada.
So that's a great question, and just so for clarification, it's actually a diploma, and I just identify the difference because typically a certificate is something that actually happens in a shorter period of time, and so the diploma is actually something that usually takes longer. So across Canada, actually, Fanshawe College is a community college, so it actually has recognition from with respect to a national perspective. It actually has some recognition also internationally. So if you're actually interested in an articulation agreement of going somewhere else, you can actually go to places like Australia or to England or to Ireland, where you can actually obtain credits and get into programs there. We have many students who actually like to go to the West, and we also have had students that go to the East Coast. So I believe I can't think of a province right now off the top of my head. I've been with the college for over 10 years, and I can tell you that the students have received employment across Canada with the recognition of the diploma. Lots of students will then, while they're in another province, also attend post-secondary education while they work.
That's a great answer, and I totally agree that how marketable it is all over Canada and not just within Ontario itself, or even outside of Canada. I think it's still valuable as well. Before I think we move on to the end of the session, I have one question. I think it is for us, which is, I enrolled at Simcoe campus. Is it possible to transfer from the Simcoe campus to London? I guess to answer that question, as Robert mentioned in the previous one, which is it depends. So the student who is asking us, please reach out to us at international@fanshawec.ca. I'm going to show it on the screen here as well. international@fanshawe.ca if you can reach out to us by mentioning your application number and any other details that you can provide. We can find out what is possible for your particular scenario. And so with that, we have now reached to the end of our session. And thank you to Robert and Sarah for providing such an insightful information and also answering pretty much all the questions that our student had. We hope that we answer all of your questions to all the participants. And if you think of any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out us at international@fanshawe.ca or book an appointment with our recruiter from your local region by visiting fanshawecollege.s.me. So that's been it. And Robert and Sarah, once again, thank you very much for the session and providing an insightful information on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye now.